Quick correction before we get started. Last week's episode stated that there were 8 essential amino acids. There are 9. You're listening to 50% Facts,
the show where we try to answer specific questions on an individual topic, and then at the end we bring in an expert to give you the real answers.
I'm Jim McDonald.
And I'm Mike Farr.
Welcome to our show.
You need an official deal, right? So it's official and then hi.
Hi.
Like that?
We're going.
Maybe we do Connor. Connor, you want to be the voice of 50% Facts? I'll be the face, you be the voice. I could lip sync the intro for YouTube, and you could say it. Like, ladies and gentlemen, Mike Farr and Jim McDonald, known as Silent Mike and Jim McD. Yeah, but I'm sitting here. I don't know, just a little different. I'm trying to think outside the box. You know, I like to think of myself as a creative. And then what did you name me? HSP. Highly sensitive person. He's labeled me. He's labeled me. I mean, he's correct, but he's labeled me. HSP.
So we're talking about the fact that Mike has been labeled a highly sensitive person.
It's true. It is true. I even think to myself sometimes at night, like, fuck, bro, I was real pissed off about that, and that meant nothing. Like, that ruined my whole day, and that meant nothing.
I can feel you on that sometimes. You know,
I think you're HSP too. That's why we get along. Yeah, we're similar.
Yeah, because some stupid little thing can just kind of change your whole perspective.
Yeah,
and really make you stuck sometimes too. It's like, I don't want to go any further that direction because
100%.
That was uncomfortable. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't like conflict. So I'm HSP, I believe. I don't know if that's official thing or not, but I am. I don't like conflict, and then I have some anxiety here and there. And those three do not work.
No.
They do not work, because then, something will trigger me. Something will trigger me with this HSP-ness. HSP-ness.
Anyway.
HSP-ness, right? Like the ness of having HSP. And then... and it's most likely driven by conflict, which I hate so much. And then my anxiety and my HSP only work with negative things.
Uh-huh.
Right? I'm sure there's someone that's HSP out there that's positive. Like, they're just so loving. They're so sensitive and loving and passionate. I'm so sensitive, like, in defense.
Yeah.
Which is like my 20% of my self-esteem issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I kind of I'm not bipolar by any means, but I have a polarity in my personality, right? A polarity in how sensitive I am and how strong I am, how confident I am, how non-confident I am, how loud I am, and how quiet I am. And that doesn't work with the HSP because it never goes positive. It's only negative sensitivity.
So you never had that sensation of getting a compliment and going, oh, man.
Never.
Know, like, pat yourself on the back a little bit.
Never. I'm never even excited anymore. I think I'm a walking zombie. I just recently purchased a house.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you must be stoked. I'm like, I'm not. I'm not stoked at all. Like, it's just like, it's cool. It's cool, but like, it's like, I got a house and now it's like, now I got so much shit to do and bills and this. It's just like another step for me.
It's work.
I think, and here's just, I'm trying to give you guys a peep into my deep, dark, weird head. So for me, the confidence side of me is already like, I already know what's going to happen in the next 50 years for me. I've already thought about it. I visualized it. I know I'm going to be successful. I know what I'm going to do. And so then when I do those things, it's like, yeah, I did that thing. But I knew I'm going to buy a house, and it's a cool house and I like it. But I never visualized myself, being a bum. And then now I'm a bum. You know what I mean? Like, I visualize good things happening, and so good things happen, and I expect good things to happen because I work hard and I think about it. Does that make sense?
You're not bipolar, you're unipolar.
Maybe. I'm something. I don't know. We need a psychologist in here to tell me.
We should actually do that.
That'll be a whole... Dude, that would be funny, actually. If someone just sat in and listened to you and I, and then they just tell us how fucked up we are.
Well, no, I actually see somebody like that about once a month, but that's...
I need that. That's
another thing altogether. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but I will say this, that I'm not somebody that particularly gets depressed.
Yeah.
Unless it's situational, but boy, I can get anxiety, and it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to come from anything, although it can.
Yeah. Mine are mostly triggered, I think. But they're trigger, like we said, like one little thing could trigger me for no reason.
Yeah, one little thing, or a cluster of like not positive things. That make you feel a little shitty about yourself, and you're like, oh, there goes my confidence.
Yeah, and I know it's not normal because I have friends, a lot of friends that would just brush that off. Like, are you kidding? Like that bugged you?
Why would that bother you?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, like, I'm about to cry. That really bugged me. You know, like I'm about to go home. Like, I'll shut down a day. I'll just shut down my whole day and be done. Yeah. Welcome to 50% Facts. We're gonna have an intro. Or do you want me to explain what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Where we take your questions, our questions, life questions, fitness, financial, personal, sexual, HS penis questions, and we're going to answer them to the worst of our ability, to the best of our ability that isn't that good.
Right.
And then we're going to take an expert that's going to answer them to the best of the world's knowledge.
We're not setting a high bar on a lot of these things.
Not for us.
Which is why we're seeking out experts and getting their opinion.
We have some experiences, but we may not have a lot of expertises.
Yeah, and we may have misunderstood like a lot of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, it always seems to run that way.
You know what I'm good at? I'm good at, which a lot of people aren't, now that I rip myself for being HSP, what I'm good at, let's end this on a positive note. What I'm good at is saying I don't know.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do that. And I've always, from day one, I've always just said like, that's not really my, like I get DMs and they're like, hey, Mike, I ripped my shoulder. Look, bro, one, we're in Instagram DM. I'm not going to diagnose your ripped deltoid.
Right.
Two, go to a doctor. That's not me. Or even otherwise, like, I want to get my snatch stronger. Could I help him? Maybe. I've been around enough weightlifters. I've done it myself a little bit. I'll just say like, you should probably go talk to so-and-so weightlifting coach, not me.
Yeah, no, I think that guys are particularly susceptible to that idea that you need to come up with, offer a solution, or solve a problem for somebody.
Yeah.
I think that it's a bad habit because you end up just talking out of your ass, basically.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. We're going everywhere. I love this. The stereotypes for women are often projected aloud, always joked about, right? The blonde joke, the dumb joke, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of stereotypes for dudes, but they don't get talked about that much. Like there is one joke about the dude never asking for directions.
Yeah, I'm that guy though.
Well, that's so true.
Or reading instructions. I hate to read instructions.
I hate instructions for sure, but that's more my ADD rather than my ego. My ego doesn't get in the way for me to say I don't know, or directions or instructions. I kind of like people being guided. Leave me. I don't know.
Well, I think that that's true of a lot of people, and I think that we've both produced a lot of informational content over the years, and people pay a lot more attention than we thought at the time.
For sure.
I think that we came to realize somewhere along the line, it's like, oh, people are actually like expecting us to know what we're talking about. And to a certain extent, we do. But to a certain extent, we don't. And that's why we're sitting here talking to you now in this way. And knowing that we're going to talk to an expert shortly who is going to answer these questions for us in a somewhat more definitive way.
Yeah, and I think some things I don't think about. I'll say something and I don't think that I'm making a statement, but every time you talk, you're making a statement, right? So like I went to Cody Nolov's last fight where he lost to TJ Dillashaw with some homies and we're vlogging. And I said something about maybe Dominic Cruz or another fighter losing to another fighter, and I was wrong. They didn't even fight. But I'm live. We're in an arena. I probably had a beer or two, and I'm vlogging, and so I don't think like, oh, did that guy actually fight? I just know like these guys, these four fighters. This guy beat that guy. This guy might have beat that guy, and so I say it like, oh yeah, that guy's so good. He beat so and so, and then I'm getting ripped. They didn't even fight. You fake UFC fan. Like, bro, in the moment, like I don't edit everything out. If I'm wrong, I don't edit it out.
So you didn't have like across the screen saying I got this wrong.
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't fact check myself. Like it's same thing with the podcasts and whatever we've done, long format and unedited format. Yeah, I'm gonna say tons of shit wrong. I'm gonna say shit wrong because I'm actually wrong, and I'm gonna say shit wrong because I misspoke.
Right.
Like that's just gonna happen. In a conversation you have with everybody day to day, people just make mistakes, and people. But you put it on the internet, you're done for.
Yeah. So this is why we're talking to experts on this show. Another thing that's going to happen, though, that I'm pretty confident about, is that people will not agree with our experts.
Sure.
And if people have opposing points of view, and they have real experts backing those opposing points of view, and I can't speak, then we'll bring those people on. If they'll
tweet
come
us. Tweet us. I'm Silent Mike with 2 Ks.
I'm the Jim McD.
Tweet us your questions that you want answered. Like we said, fitness, financial, life, self-help, anything. I don't give a shit. We'll talk about cars. What do I care? Things that we can answer, though. And then 2, send us an expert you think, or just send us someone you think that's a dope expert, and then I'll find a question for him.
Yeah, and also if you want to send us a voice memo or a video of your question that we can use on the show, then you can send it to social@50%facts. That's 50% spelled out facts.com.
Yeah. And I'm excited to dig into some of the fitness stuff just because it'll give us a chance to talk to some of our homies that I haven't talked to in a while. It's a good excuse. Like in the fitness industry, the only excuse to hang out is like the Arnold and like stuff like that. And I don't enjoy expos that much anymore. I think they're the same thing. I was having a conversation yesterday. Me and Connor are about to go to TwitchCon for the first time this weekend, which is Twitch's expo. Twitch, for those that don't know, it's a streaming social media, I guess, or streaming platform owned by Amazon that's typically for gaming and gamers, and you'll hang out, build a community, whatever. And so I'm really deep into that over the last year or two, and it just happens to be in San Jose this year. So we're like, yeah, we'll go. And I was talking to someone who's launching a product there, and him and I were talking. He's also in the fitness industry. He owned a supplement company back in the day, and he's like, man, those like the Arnold, the Olympia, all of them, they literally haven't changed in the last 15 years. Like maybe there's been a couple different like faces that are cool now that weren't then, but like not that many. Like Michael Hearns was cool, he's still cool. Like Dana Lynn Bailey, you know, like she still has a line. She's still like a figure face, and like things are always kind of the same. The products are the same, just slightly different label. There's nothing you go up and you're like, wow, that's so new and so different. Where in Twitch and gaming, it's related to tech, and that's like the fastest moving industry in the world. So like things are always different. There's, in very least, there's a new game.
Yeah.
Like there's no new game in fitness. Like there's a barbell, there's a dumbbell, and there's like stretching.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, people expect there to be new things, and if something's talked about as being different, there isn't nothing's been different or new for a long time. Things are I think the language around things changes, and I think that that's actually something that we're trying to deal with here is the fact that that if you don't have the vocabulary to have a discussion with somebody, then you're not talking about the same specific thing.
Right.
And I think that people half know vocabulary, back to 50%.
Yeah.
And so they'll use a word and they'll not know really what it means in the context of a nutrition question or a fitness question or anything else. And they'll just be wrong.
Especially nutrition.
Yeah.
People are having all these conversations, but they're talking about different things. They're talking about whether we're talking about performance, longevity, general health, a specific thing, specific condition, gluten intolerant, whatever it might be. People are just like, they just flat label like, oh, this is the best diet. Like, the best diet for what? You know, like, and so hopefully we get to answer some of those things going on.
Absolutely.
Carbohydrates
are the are number 2 on our list of things that we want to talk about. We're starting with the macros. Carbohydrates. What do we know about carbohydrates?
Just you guys like, oh, carbo, like we're real fucking cool. We're gonna start a little bit more basic, and then we'll get into what happens when your penis breaks later. I'll help you guys answer that and why your butthole itches. We'll get into more things later, but for now, we're going to cover some basics, and then we'll teach you the steroids or how to get jacked or how to get a girl. You know, social things would be cool. I know you talked about like love and sex, like no joke, like a pickup guy would be cool. You know, pickup was such a thing when I was in college for some reason. Like the psychology of getting a date or getting laid. Like there's books on it. There's a big YouTube channel called The Simple Pickup. I bet you we could get those guys. I think they know Bart. That'd be funny. How to pick up women. I know all you nerds out there trying to get laid. Tinder's not working.
We got to solve the incel problem.
Yeah, we got you.
Maybe it's on us to solve the incel problem.
We'll do it. Carbohydrate. I don't know carbo. Hydrate means to water. Keep hydrated.
I think.
For sure. So there's some direct thing that I did learn. So obviously carbs is another macronutrient. 4 calories per gram of carbs. I know that. I know it's our first and easiest energy source for our bodies to tap into, right? It turns it into glycogen and all those things, and your brain wants to use it easiest. Your muscles hold onto it with water, and there is some exact calculation that I should probably remember of how many carbs you eat per how much water is stored in your muscle while you do it. In my head, each muscle kind of has, like your body as well, has like a tank of glycogen, right? Like a certain amount. And when you start to exercise or even just live, you're slowly taken away from that tank, much like a gas tank.
Right.
It helps you get pumped in the gym. I know that. You're trying to look swole, eat some carbs.
That blows your veins up.
Yeah, because I think that has to do with the water, right? And the circulation.
Water, yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I don't know that that's true, but I believe it to be true. Okay, so here's a question for you. Is it douchey to use CHO?
Oh, because is that the chemical form? I think that's the chemical form. So I think it's cool.
You think it's cool?
I think it's a chemical form. Carbo. Goddamn! I almost grabbed my phone to Google. But the rule is also that me and Jim are never going to Google. Him and I are coming up with a list of questions, and we're going to get them from you guys on Twitter. But we're never going to do extra research,
right?
On purpose,
right? Exactly, because the point of this is to prove what we don't know.
The point of it is that we are experts in what we do, and we still don't know shit.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. So
I think CHO is the chemical thing, right? Because H2O or something.
I know I've been hearing it for a very, very long time. The other one that bugs me, and I have to decide whether or not this is a douchey thing, is kcals.
Yeah, I think who writes it. It depends, right?
Yeah.
So if you have like a little, fit bunny and all she does is body weight squats and she's talking about kcals and CHOs, you're like, all right. But our guest on here is also Eric Helms, who's a doctor. And if he says kcals, I'm not going to say a word. We're going to doctor.
I think we're going to just ask him the question
douchey
directly.
question.
He's enough of a dude. He's a nerd, but he's a dude.
No. Yeah, that's why he's cool. I'm going to also ask him to freestyle. He used to rap. He used to rap and dance battle.
Okay, so I was walking over to Starbucks, which is like a block from here. Excuse me. Yesterday, I'm losing my voice.
More coffee.
Stand by. Okay, and there's a guy in the parking lot on the ground with a MacBook, and he's got beats playing on it, and he's fucking rapping to it.
That's sick.
And he looked like a homeless guy with a laptop.
Maybe he's just vibing.
I don't know.
You got to get inspiration from somewhere.
I guess maybe. I don't know. I mean, he sounded pretty good. I don't know exactly what he was saying, but you know how the rhythm and the meter sounds a particular way. He could have been saying anything. I don't know. He could have been speaking another language. He could have been speaking in tongues. I don't know.
He could have stolen the laptop. He could have been homeless.
It's totally possible.
Yeah. But our homeless, I just moved downtown. Our homeless ain't that bad. Like compared to like LA or San Francisco, like they're straight zombies, man. The drugs and stuff in LA and San Francisco are way worse than here.
I think that could be true. Yeah, that you're like sort of right on that corridor too that comes back and forth between.
Yeah, we're pretty hidden right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We don't get with New York. Even the New York homeless, I feel like those guys are just down on their luck. And this is 100% me just being judgmental. And again, but I feel like they're down on their luck in New York. But like they're not all strung out. But like San Francisco and LA, like all the homeless are so strung out. They're on a different dimension.
I feel like with it, we might be able to do a multi-part episode on causes of homelessness.
Yeah, the psychology of it.
Yeah.
Because I've heard, here goes all my facts. That's how this whole thing started. We have a script, but I don't know if you guys read it, but basically I was throwing out shit facts in a past podcast. Yes. And I said I might be 50% wrong, and Jim agreed that I'm probably 50% wrong.
and that turned into the name of that episode.
Yeah.
50% facts, which is how we got to be here.
I think homeless, they did, and I don't know how they even know this, right? What are you going to go survey a bunch of homeless people? They're going to tell you to fuck off. But I think they said like a large percent of homeless choose to be homeless because they don't like the restrictions of the man. They like to be off the grid.
Yeah.
And it was a larger percentage that surprised me. 20, 30, 40% of people choose to be homeless. They don't like the confines of house, right? Maybe it's a claustrophobia thing. Mm-hmm. Maybe it is a mental health thing, but they don't like that. And they don't like, the confines of our community in America and our societal binds.
How do they feel about carbohydrates?
Carbohydrates, that's all I know. You don't need them. I think it's the one macronutrient that isn't essential to living.
I think that's correct. What else? Oh, okay. So we're talking about dietary carbohydrates. Yeah. They're very processed ones.
Yeah.
So very simple ones. There are like a lot of categories, right? There's like
simple, refined. I think that's similar. But then within that, there's sugar, right, which is a refined carbohydrate. I like where your head's at. I'm reliving my 10-year-old college experience. And then within there's fructose, there's glucose, there's anything with the os.
Right.
Does os mean sugar?
It probably does.
Because then there's a million of those things.
That's the question.
Yeah. Os means sugar, and there's a million things, a million of them. And some are fructose. What did I say? Glucose, fructose, lactose, milk sugar, right? So there's a bunch of different those, and they react generally the same, but slightly different in the body. Like I believe fructose wants to be stored in your
liver,
I believe, and once that overflows, then you start to store it as adipose tissue. Glucose or carbohydrates in general are a little bit easier to overeat because they taste delicious, especially when they're mixed with some kind of fat. Like think of the most delicious things on the planet, and they have a lot of fat, dietary fat, and dietary carbs like donuts, ice cream, pizza. All the best products on the entire planet have both of those, and so they're easy to overeat. And when you overeat carbohydrates, they are easier to be stored as adipose tissue or body fat. I know that because I've been there. I feel you guys.
A thing that I think I've heard recently, and I don't know that this is true, but we'll ask, is that if you're just eating carbohydrate and you're not eating fat with carbohydrate, you're less likely to turn that energy into fat storage.
I've heard that too, but I don't know. Again, we talked about like chronic things or acute things. I don't know if that's acute or chronic. You know, if that means like literally in a bite, in a meal, or in a day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it has to depend. Because that's the same thing with another question that we're going to dig into in a different episode. But the index. Why can't I think right now? Glycemic index, right? With like insulin spiking and how hard it hits your body.
Yeah.
That they studied it with acute things, meaning like in one meal. But the fact is, it matters what you ate 24 hours ago. If I ate a shit ton of fiber for breakfast and then I have a just sugar meal 6 hours later, it'll be affected in your body differently. It'll be processed in your body different, so the insulin spike won't be as hard. Right. Rather than if I haven't eaten for a week and then I go eat a Snickers bar. A Snickers is a bad example because it has fat in it, but you know what I mean. I eat a bunch of sugar, then the index is going to go through the sky.
Yeah, like gummy stuff is pretty much.
Yeah, gummy bears.
It's like sugar and glycine or something, right? It's just Jello basically.
Yeah, fruits, veggies, those are carbs, and fruits tend to be a little bit more simple. Of a sugar.
You typically have very much fat in them. It's more fiber. Okay.
I think that's a big difference too in how complex the carb is. Itself is if there's fiber involved, it's more of a complex carb, right? Because people think about brown rice, they think about veggies, things like that, and even some fruits. And then you start to think more refined sugars. You start to think gummy bears, and mostly man-made shit. Cane sugar is obviously a natural one. Fruit's a natural one. I don't think there's that many refined sugars that are unprocessed.
Where else does sugar come from? Beets? Cane.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, I think to refine it, cane is like the main one that's refined, but I think a lot of it is fruits and veggies, but those have fiber. So that's what people talk about, like general health recommendations for people that want to get healthy and not be overweight. Is you eat more natural looking foods, less processed foods. You tend to get less sugar in a more voluminous product, right? To eat a whole apple, it's 20 carbs, maybe 15 sugar, but it's got like 5 grams of fiber, and you're pretty full after a big old apple. Where you eat like one tiny handful of gummy bears, and you're probably at 30 grams of sugar, no fiber, no vitamins or minerals.
Right.
It's my favorite group, carbs. For those, those that want to send us anything. I love carbs.
What was I going to say? The carbs plus fat thing makes me think of John Berardi, way back in the day. He basically said, eat your protein with your fat, or eat your carbs with your fat, but don't eat your fat and your carbs together.
Yeah, and you hear about that a lot now, but I feel like you hear about that in, again, the bigger picture rather than the meal. And I don't know. I know what you eat together does have an effect.
And I don't know whether or not, I don't know how that's backed up by studies. Science. I have no clue about that.
And that's, again, goes to like the toxicology report from that, like you eating sugar and fat together, and then like what you do that for a year. Like it might balance out over a year, right? Like the insulin spike or the how much adipose you, because although we eat and we're constantly storing fat and constantly using our body fat as a fuel source.
Okay.
Right? Like all the time we're burning, we're making energy, right?
Right.
Like there's a little bit of fat in even black coffee, like a hair, right? And so you're using that and you're whatever. So what you eat in a meal has a certain effect on your blood and how your body reacts, but it may not have a long-term effect. It may not matter. It may be insignificant in the big picture.
All right.
Hopefully Eric will know.
Yeah. Well, let's go to our expert. So we're back. with Eric Helms, and we're going to talk about carbohydrates. My question number one is the hydrate in hydrate referring to water really, or is some other chemical action?
So yeah. The carbohydrates, if you actually write it down, you write CHO. So it has carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen in it, and so yeah, those are where we get those essential elements from. Is they are present in carbohydrate.
You set us up for the next question. Me and Jim had a discussion whether it's douchey and what level of douche and who can write or text CHO and kcals. Am I allowed to do it? Is it only for smart people like you? What if a Zumba teacher writes it? Are they allowed to write like that?
That's a great question. So I think it's who are you trying to pander to? Like if you want if it fits your macros crowd and the PubMed Ninjas out there to like you, you better write
PubMed Ninjas. PubMed Ninjas, dude. I'm an Eric Helms samurai. I just follow your lead, bro. I'm not a PubMed Ninja. That's the best. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, that's when basically the entire argument is solved by just sending a link to PubMed. So you're like, yeah, so I've been doing a 5x5 lately. And you're like, nah, you're doing it wrong. Link.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Right. I say one thing on Twitter, and everyone just blasts me. Well, the study I read more studies than you. I'm like, I'm sure you did, pal. Great. What do you want? A high five?
So yeah, if those people are getting you on Twitter, man, I would definitely go with the CHO and the kcals. That'll help you.
That'll keep my street cred.
So
yeah, absolutely.
It's okay on Twitter. Is it okay on Instagram? Depending upon.
No, Instagram. You just need to wear like tight pants and say something about motivation.
Carbs with a Z.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, gains with a Z, carbs with a Z, most things with a Z.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
So does everything that ends with OSE actually constitute some kind of carbohydrate?
Yeah, typically. So we're talking, lactose, glucose, fructose. Yeah, those are typically, if you're looking at nutrition texts, that's like one of the cheat things you remember when you're taking nutrition. Like ASE is an enzyme that breaks it down. Like lactase breaks down lactose. That kind of stuff. So yeah.
So should we be leaning toward one or another version of an OS?
I think for the most part, no. You probably want a broader range of things. So, most of the time in our diets, we're taking in a blend of polysaccharides, disaccharides, and monosaccharides. So saccharide just means like a sugar. And most people, when they think sugar, they think table sugar, they think evil, they think I'm going to die. And in reality, all carbohydrates eventually become sugar in some form or another in our body. So we use glucose to fuel the body and live. Can't live without it. Having stable blood glucose levels is what determines whether or not you have, diabetes or metabolic disorder. And so, for example, lactose is a disaccharide that we get in dairy products, and it consists of galactose and glucose bound together. We break it down, we get both. And then most polysaccharides are what we think of as complex carbohydrates that we break down these multipolymer strains of glucose, like maltodextrin or things like that. And also they have fiber, and they take longer to digest. But for the most part, if you have a good balanced diet, you're going to be getting in a mixture of all of it. And that's because you're eating fruits, that's because you're eating dairy, that's because you're eating grains, and even the occasional straight up sugar in there as well is totally fine, just so long as it's all well balanced.
Does that have anything to do with your energy? I think, the old school thought is, brown rice is going to give me energy for 20 hours and white rice is going to give me energy for 3 hours. And I made up those numbers, but that's kind of how the plain thought is. Or broccoli has some carbs in it and some fiber. That's long-term energy. Or I'm going to eat this quote unquote energy bar by Cliff or whoever wants to sponsor us. And that's going to give me energy right now.
Good old Cliff. Yeah, so you guys have probably heard of the glycemic index before?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so like the glycemic index is a rough metric of how long does it take for blood glucose to rise in response to eating a food in isolation. And the GI of foods it's accurate, but it has limited utility because it's based on eating, like if you just sat down and ate a bowl of white bread or something like that. Definitely something I had for breakfast this morning.
Yeah, I'm down.
You guys. Yeah. Yep. Get out my bowl, put 3 slices of bread in the bowl, grab my fork, and we're having breakfast, right?
A little syrup on top.
Yes, but now you've destroyed GI. See, this is exactly my point.
Damn it.
See, as soon as you start combining foods, now we only know we can guess, but it changes the glycemic load of the food. The total amount you eat and the types of eat kind of throw that number out of the window. So when you have fats and protein and carbs together, as I mentioned way back in the day when I was on the last show, that can change the digestion time of foods. Like if you were to add fat to protein, I think that's what we talked about last time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I can't remember. But if you add, if you add fat and protein to your carbohydrate, same thing happens. So digestion speed will slow, the appearance of glucose in your blood will change, and the GI score is essentially no longer valid if you want to get an assessment of that food. So I think, what we did in the 90s, and especially in bodybuilding circles, was we got a little too focused on GI, and we were like, right, we want to have steady energy all the time. I want to eat, these foods, and these foods, oats, brown rice instead of white. Basically, nothing white. It's got to be the whole grain version.
Just a bunch of racist nutritionists.
Exactly. Just we're done with white privilege and our food as well. That's it. So the kind of the prevailing thing was let's just really base a good carbohydrate, quote unquote, based on its GI score. And I think the reality is that may be true if you're eating it in isolation, but that's just not the case in the context of a broader way of looking at foods. And I think a better way of assessing whether or not carbohydrate sources are quote unquote good is, do they have a good micronutrient profile? Are they delivering a lot of phytonutrients as well? So things like fruits and vegetables are great, but so are grains, so are lentils, so are a lot of like legumes, all that stuff. There's many different sources of carbohydrates that have a lot of good nutritional value that's kind of independent of whether or not they have a quote-unquote good or bad GI.
So we shouldn't be eating carbs from fast foods, though, right? Or does it matter?
Well, the funny thing is that most fast foods don't give you just carbs.
Right.
I think and this may be a little bit of a tangent, so feel free to pull me back if I go off the deep end.
No, let's go.
All right, I'm jumping off the deep end.
Yeah, we're going to hold hands and jump with you.
I love it. We're all going to die together. So you guys have probably heard people talking about food addiction and how people are addicted to sugar, and that sugar is driving the obesity epidemic because everyone can't get enough of it, and they're just shoveling it in their mouth.
Yeah.
And they'll quote things like, "Hey, well, that's why people eat cookies and cake so much, and drink soda so much, et cetera, et cetera." And I think they're only getting part of it right. If you were to look at studies where we look at what foods are most overconsumed, it really comes down to very high palatability. And palatability just means, how good does that shit taste? And when you eat it, does it make you want to eat more? Because there are some foods.
I'm an expert in that area. That's my expert area.
I would say that data would show that half the states are as well. Yeah. So you're in good company. And this is a thing. We have a very different food environment these days. So it's if we just follow our natural signals of eat until I feel full, certain foods aren't going to get you there until you are really full. I think we can all imagine if we sat down to a meal of sweet potatoes, some chicken with a nice rub, and some nice Spanish rice. That would be good. We would enjoy it. We would eat it, but it wouldn't make us hungrier with each bite. We would probably get a little fuller with each bite. On the other hand, if you sit down to a bag of sour cream and onion Lay's potato chips, you have the first chip and you're like, God damn, I need another chip.
Yeah.
So there are foods that actually drive additional consumption. And when you look at the research on what those are, they're typically combinations of both sweet and savory versus just one or the other alone. Like, you really don't find people, breaking into Starbucks late at night and just getting caught by the police downing sugar packets in disguise. I couldn't afford it. My dealer was out of town, like that doesn't happen. But people will crush an entire bag of Oreos or an entire bag of chips, which is actually not that high in sugar at all. So it's really these combinations of flavors which drive hunger. Things like pastries, cookies, ice cream, pizza. Those are all in the top 5. And the only one that is... Yeah, I know. I'm getting you guys all hot and bothered.
Yeah.
The only one that is in the top five that drives a lot of overconsumption is soda. And soda kind of comes at it from a mechanical angle. So we don't see, quote unquote, calories from liquid quite as well because it doesn't distend our belly and create that fullness. So if you're just drinking straight sugar water, then that's not going to get sensed as much. It's very easy to keep drinking soda. So that's the one place where you probably do need to watch your straight up sugar content is when you're drinking it.
I don't want to keep going off the deep end, and I don't know who out there, or you, Eric, or who believes in God or evolution or Freud or whoever created us. I don't know, but why is it everything delicious is addictive and not so great for us? Who did that?
One, I would say that Freud definitely created man.
That's what I've heard in a textbook.
I think we have solid proof that Freud was the progenitor of the human
something
race.
Like that, like the penis rules us all, or something he said. I don't know.
Correct. The great phallus ship is landed on Earth. He came out, and then he clapped his hands, and people just got sprung out of their mother's wombs, wishing to kill their father.
That's what I was told.
Yes.
Dr. Eric Helms confirms.
Yeah. So it is unfortunate that the stuff that tastes the best is also the stuff that gets us in the most trouble. And I think from a practical sense, there's ways to approach this when you are trying to change your body composition, improve your health. Some of the ways that I think we got it wrong in the quote unquote like flexible dieting, if it fits your macros community, is back in, I would say, in the mid 2000s, and I was part of this. I was kind of there at ground zero when the wars on bodybuilding.com started happening, where you'd have your bodybuilders warring against these PubMed Ninjas. And what ended up happening was they kind of closed ranks and stopped learning from one another, where the idea of focusing on food, quote unquote, quality, and certain foods in a more qualitative sense got shunned. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, dieting is easy. If you just eat whatever you want and just hit these three numbers, just fit it into your macros, you can do whatever you want. When I diet, I get to diet on, fat-free frozen yogurt, and I get to have Walton Farms, and I get to eat whatever I want, and I hit my protein. It doesn't matter. And you idiots out there are only eating 3 foods and you're binging. Well, the reality is that both camps have a little something and are missing a little something. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, if it fits your macros folks get to a point in their diet where their calories are just so low that they're really struggling because they're trying to fit in these foods that are really a bad budgetary decision. They pack a lot of calories for a low budget. There's a lot of flavor, and they're trying to satisfy themselves. They're trying to make their diets taste as good as they can when they only got 1,800 calories. And that's just not a good idea. You're basically combining that whole sour cream and onion effect of, man, I've got to have more of that with, and you cannot because we have a limit.
Yeah.
So really, there is something in the approach of the old school bodybuilding where most of the foods are relatively bland, in that while they're not very satisfying, and you really do feel quite a prisoner to this very short food list, which is why that's the problem on their side of the camp, it also doesn't drive immediate overconsumption and cravings. So the trick is to find a nice blend of the two. And as you diet, you're focusing on basically not trying to get as much flavor out of it as possible, but you're trying to you just don't want to love it. Basically, you want to eat foods that you don't dislike instead of chasing foods that you absolutely love. So you sit down, like I said, that chicken with a nice rub, that sweet potato cooked in its own jacket, it's got that natural sweetness, and some Spanish rice. You're going to enjoy that meal, but it's not going to be just like, oh my God, I wish I could have 4 of those. Likewise, you don't completely ban yourself from the fat-free frozen yogurt or the occasional treat. Maybe you do things like having a refeed day or diet breaks and say 10 to 20% of your calories, you allow yourself to have foods that would definitely not be on that old school bodybuilder list. So you get to satisfy your cravings, but in a reasonable way, while the vast majority of your food are these kind of single ingredient food item staples that have lots of micronutrients, fiber, protein, and give you a lot of mechanical satiety for a low calorie budget.
So just looking at my notes, we felt like maybe there was something special about fructose. Is there anything special about fructose or not?
Like you can't store it or something, that's like a magical fruit sugar fairy?
Yeah, a lot of the I would say some of the ketogenic diet crowd, some of the anti-sugar crowd, and there is some mechanistic underpinnings in this. They're looking at the way that fructose is processed, how it has to go through the liver. It can't be directly stored as muscle glycogen, and there's postulations that's a problem. But the reality is that when you look at the research that shows overconsumption of fructose to be an issue, it's actually typically in mouse models, and they're overfeeding them drastically. They're giving them a huge amount of fructose that even in, let's say, the average overweight American is unrealistic. Even when we consume high fructose corn syrup, the difference between that and regular table sugar is a very, very small percentage difference. If I remember correctly, it's like 54% fructose and then like 46% glucose versus a 50-50 blend in sugar. So when I see people going, don't have that garbage high fructose corn syrup, just have honey, I'm like, that's a 4% difference,
Yeah.
So the scenarios where fructose can be isolated and called the kind of, the boogeyman that's behind the obesity epidemic or the overconsumption crisis we have, I think is pretty far-fetched. I really do think that to get into a scenario where the overconsumption of fructose is in and of itself a problem, you have to have some pretty out there kind of diet setups in combination with someone who might be already metabolically dysfunctional. So to think of that as a public health crisis, I don't think so. I think if we go back to what's the real issue, it's that we have these highly palatable foods that are cheap, always available, and our lives are getting more and more busy. We do more and more mindless eating, where we just have to grab food without thinking about it. We don't have structure. We don't sit down and eat with our family anymore. Our plates are getting larger. Our glasses are getting larger. I tell you, if you just go travel around the world, all of a sudden you notice that the glasses, the plates, the forks, everything is much smaller in every other part of the world besides the U.S. Food is more expensive. Food places aren't open 24/7. And there's all of these things that compound that make it very easy to get very tasty foods all the time and eat way past what would normally be considered a reasonable portion size because we don't have the same satiety cues anymore. So I think anytime we try to isolate it to something like fructose or even fat like we did in the 80s or kind of in the early 2000s, we really were on that paleo kick where it's anything that wasn't around when we were, chasing velociraptors down with sticks, back when Freud had just recently created the planet.
Yeah, he created fire. Really, he taught us the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he created us and dinosaurs at the same time, and he said, "Fight. Whoever wins, I'll teach about."
I've seen that movie.
Freudian philosophy.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
Yeah.
So I think whether it's what Paleo Man ate: fat, carbs, sugar, fructose. I think if anytime we try to find a single smoking gun, we're almost invariably wrong because the obesity epidemic has a multifaceted pieces to it of why we are where we are today.
So anything that we haven't already covered that you think that people either get wrong or don't understand about carbohydrates?
Yeah, I think the big thing to know about carbohydrates is that they become increasingly important the more active you are, and that depending on the type of activity you're doing, they might be less or more important. If you're someone who just lifts weights a couple times per week for an hour, kind of powerlifting focused, you don't need to slam a huge maltodextrin shake an hour before you train. However, if you're someone who's lifting a few times per week and then going on, 30 or 40K bike rides regularly, then you probably do want to look at things like Gatorade or goo packets or maltodextrin as something that might actually help your performance. But for the average exerciser, it's more about just eating a nice, healthy blend of multiple types of carbohydrate sources in moderation within the total calorie budget, focusing on fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and also allow yourself the occasional treat. But just make sure that you have structure, you got balance, and don't think that carbohydrates are the devil.
Wrapping it up, your favorite carb source, most delicious?
Oh, that's tough, man. That's tough.
Are you a carb guy?
I definitely eat carbs.
Yeah.
It's just they're always in combination with something else. Like I love pizza, but that I wouldn't call it carb.
Right. But pizza's great. Pizza.
Hey,
we'll take pizza.
I'll say pasta, just because that's a little more. Yeah, Italian. I'm always a happy man.
I like it. Where can people find you, Eric?
Check me out on 3dmusclejourney.com. That's for anyone interested in drug-free information on bodybuilding, powerlifting, or just general science, where you can find links to my research review, monthly applications, and strength sport if you want to stay up on the science of things, or if you want to read my books on nutrition or training, check me out at muscleandstrengthpyramids.com. And if you want some more lighthearted content, a little bit of lifting history, check me out at Helms3DMJ on Instagram.
Thanks a lot, Eric.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, be sure to share with your friends. Do us a favor and subscribe. You can follow me, Silent Mike, with 2Ks on Instagram and Twitter. Send us your questions on Twitter, and we'll catch you in the next one.
You can find me at the Jim McD on all social media. The show is 50% Facts, 50, PERCENT, on all social media where it's been established. Next week, we're going to take a sidestep into the glycemic index with Lane Norton.